Welcome to the final event of the Menard Family Lecture Series. And this is also the Truist Bank annual lecture for this year. A little housekeeping as usual. First, if you don't know what your major is going to be, it's going to be economics. So make sure you take some economics classes. When you sign up for classes next semester, you should sign up for economics for sure. Student entrepreneurship minor, and you'll be in good stead when you graduate. If you're supposed to receive extra credit, you probably need to fill out those surveys you got. And if you're not getting extra credit, you should probably also fill them out because we use that information to determine what type of speakers to bring in and how to do our speaker series. So I appreciate any of that. So today we're fortunate to have Magatte Wade back to U of L. So Magatte's back. She was here a couple of years ago, and she's a serial entrepreneur and a visionary business leader with a passion for creating positive change in Africa. She's the founder of and CEO of SkinIsSkin.com. It's a lip balm with a mission, and she's dedicated to reducing racial discrimination while creating jobs and prosperity in her home country of Senegal. She's got a book coming out soon, The Heart of a Cheetah. Highly recommend it. You'll want to buy it after you hear her talk today, I'm sure. And so I'm going to interview her for about 30, 35 minutes, and then we'll open up the floor to questions. And you can ask anything you want. She'll be happy to answer, I think. And so I'm going to have Magatte start off by just telling us a little bit about her company and how it evolved and how easy it was to start her business in Senegal.
That's a lot of questions. Can you guys hear me okay? Thanks, first of all, for having me. I'm very much appreciate that. And thanks for coming on this cold, rainy, day. Last time I came here, it was nice, sunny, and warm, and so this room was packed with people. And then I'm just cracking up over here because I love to see how us humans always are so predictable. So this place is the most lit. Over here, the next one, and over there, the darkest spot. And everyone went there. It's almost like we go right. It's funny how we operate. Yeah, so my company is called Skin is Skin. I literally, so because you asked me to kind of walk people through this process, my company was born in my mind. Skin is Skin. It was born in 2016. Exactly almost 4 years before the rest of the country had its George Floyd moment. My George Floyd moment happened when, Fernando Castile, Eric Garner, you may or may not remember that bizarre summer of such shootings happening and, racial tensions at a peak in the country, at least from what I have seen, because I don't pretend to have been here forever. I come from Senegal, west coast of Africa. In any case, when all of that was happening, I remember that I was reading, I was spending all my time on what they call Black Twitter, because by then I was just like, I need to be where my people are so I can hear what's going on from their standpoint. And I have to say, it really got me on a place of, I saw myself descending into a place of, very dark place of hate and retaliation to everything that I was hearing and seeing that then. But I remember that just as I was starting to go really almost to a place of no return in terms of that feeling of hate, a word just popped, a sentence, I should say, 3 words popped in my mind, and it was skin is skin, move beyond. And by no means, when I say that, skin is skin, move beyond, I'm not saying that I'm looking or I see the world as a colorless or colorblind world. I am very black, and being black is very much part of my identity. But if for you to think that that gives you the right to know everything else about me, I think you're profoundly wrong. So yes, I'm black, and okay, if you want to know the whole story of me, you've got to have those two sides. And so it got me to actually do that. I just wanted to then work with discrimination. That was my whole thing. I wanted to know basically what discrimination was beyond the headlines. And I won't bore you with all the details here, but eventually we started Skin is Skin. I wanted it to be called Skin is Skin because I was sitting around. I did not want a fancy branding name. I meant what I meant. Skin is skin, okay? So started this brand, and for me, everyone will tell you, most companies go out looking for a cause. We work a cause looking for a product. So my whole thing was, if I really want to help tackle discrimination, one of the first things that I understood, as I spent more time in the world of, behavioral scientists, brain surgeons and scientists, as well as evolutionary biologists, all these people, what they showed, what you did learn is at the end of the day, your better brain, your better bias is going to be taken to all of us at some point to make assumptions of people or situations, because evolutionarily speaking, that's how it works. That's a whole another conversation, but then you're starting to understand that the habit of unconscious bias, because that's really all I was talking about here, unconscious bias. Someone saying to my face, there is no way in this world that you can be my equal because you're a man or you're a woman. Someone like that has really not what I'm talking to. But the people I'm talking to is the majority of the rest of us who are committing microaggressions every single moment that God creates. And most of the time that's not really known. Those are the people that I'm dealing with. And in a way that's where it's most insidious. So in any case, understanding that if it's a habit, then how do we break that? How do we break habits? So anyway, so starting this product, long story short. Yes, I have my habit, and I want to break it. And so just like if I bite my nails, it becomes a habit, right? So it's a habit, that's what I'm doing it. But I don't want to bite my nails anymore. So what you need there is to say, I've got it, okay, I understand. And then, what they do is they give you a bitter nail polish to put on your nails. And then eventually, every time you go to bite your nails, the bitterness just triggers your brain to say, oops, stop, you're doing this. And you said you're not, and so you bend down. The first time it lasts 5 seconds, then it goes on to last 5 minutes, and before you know it, the bias is gone. And then I will worry about the neuroscience part and how it works, the neurons, how they connect back in your head, and how this whole process works. The bottom line, my job is here to say, switch it on. Don't let the brain on its auto pilot. So we're a cause looking for a product. We're looking to create a product that can help with that journey. Eventually, I said I wanted it to be called Skinny Skin, and it needed to be small, so it's to be portable. So you can always have it in your pocket. So it needed to be something really to the skin, small, so it can be portable, unisex, so you have to you go for it. And it doesn't matter how old you are, you can use this. And that's why the bomb came about. Because it's small, you have your pocket, you can use your skin, all that stuff. You don't have to be skincare, what did you call it? And so we started it, and this lip balm was meant to be your little mini cricket in your pocket. And every time you want mini cricket, you see very conscious. Then you pull it out, somehow, because you know the message,
turn this down.
What you see is not what you get.
Yeah.
And that's why you got, yes, very good, but so that's how what as a brand is going to do. And eventually, buyers and everything, we love to hold this market. So you don't know our company's dollar. And then we get to find out that many people were creating and this person was just giving me feedback. And she said this to me, it was not a she, it was a he actually. He said this to me the first time, almost like 6 months after I started the company. It's only 3-4 years later that I decided to really start paying attention to it. And finally, earlier this year, we said, this is it. There's something, we have something, but it could be so much better if I could find a way for people to feel like they're, like they're invited rather than in the wagon. And that's when we eventually went back to the drawing board and we tried to devise a plan. If you don't like it, there are a couple ways to tackle stereotypes. You can finger wag at people, don't do it, it's bad. Or you can totally yourself, electroshock their brain by showing them something people they have an understanding of, which totally shatters anything the brain might be used to seeing from them.
And that's what we did. We went back to rebrand, and now it's more about bringing back to people a face of Africa that they've never seen. These products have been made in Senegal, my home country. And most importantly, I'm using this opportunity now to actually bring back, even shattering stereotype, yes, we manufacture in Africa, and now we're going into this whole concept of Care 3.0. The way you asked me the question is a bit bizarre. Nobody ever asked me this way, but I'm not sure if you're getting the answer you wanted. But you see how sometimes brands pivot and evolve in their identity to you keep your cause, but eventually you find better ways to go serve it. So I'm not sure the cost.
Is Africa's the poorest place in the world, region in the world. Thank you. Kind of slow here, right? And so what's the reason for that? And there's lots of people who have all these different ideas, and I can fix poverty and all these types of ideas. Have they been successful, and what do you see as the main reason for people being poor?
So, Africa is, yes,
That's
the
on this
poorest
receipt.
region in the world. When you talk
We
to
don't have anything in
when it
here.
comes to GDP of people, we live there. Because otherwise, so many people are first are, especially sometimes I hear my fellow young Africans say, don't say Africa is poor. Well, what else do you want me to say? Yes, we are rich in young people. We are rich in resources. We are rich in so many ways. But, yes, we are the poorest nation in the world when it comes to GDP, last time I checked. So I just want to make that distinction very clear now. Then, for me, this question you just asked me, it's pretty much been the defining question of my life. And the way that all happened is because I was born in Senegal, West Coast of Africa. Eventually, after breastfeeding, 2 years into my life, my mother and my father decided to do what so many African parents have done before them, and continue to do after them, which is take the painful decision of migrating and leaving behind everything that they hold dear. In this case, me, and my grandma, and their family, their communities, everybody. But they left us behind because, you know what? We gotta migrate to places where we can really manifest our greatest potential and send money back home, so that this little girl who is behind might have a better outcome now. My parents and And so after they migrated, a few years later, they called for me to be reunited with them. They were back then living in Germany, and I remember right around age 7, my family came back for me. So in the middle of the winter, I'm moving now to Germany. I've never left my village. I've never left my country. I've never left my continent. I didn't know what cold weather was, let alone this white stuff coming from the sky. I'm like, are you kidding me? What is this? Anyway, big, traumatic moment of my life. So the minute I arrive in Germany, though, I'm thinking, wait a minute, how come they have this and we don't? And in my case, all little girl Magat was saying was, how come back home my shower, to get my shower, it's a 40-45 minutes affair. Because grandma has to get her stove, and we're talking here about a coal stove, like a little stove like you have when you go camping. You put the coal in there, with charcoal, and then with little paper or with wood, you get this fire going, and then you wait famously until the coal becomes really hot, when it can really actually boil or cook something. Then she puts a cup of water on there, and when it finally boils, she takes that water, dumps it in the bigger bucket. Somebody, my uncle or my older cousin, somebody stronger than her, drags it to the shower area, and there, finally, with a little pot, I can take my shower. I'm sure that by now you guys are exhausted by just what I explained. Can you imagine me having to wait for that? And here in Germany, mom is like, my God, time for the shower. I'm like, I am certainly not getting butt naked in this cold weather. Where is a bucket of water? And she's like, oh, come on, you silly, just jump in the shower. So there I get in the shower, turn the knobs around, the water's coming down at the temperature that I wanted, and voila. In less than a minute or so, I am right there using my shower. Comparing that to, I was like, and the same thing about everything. Paved roads over here, unpaved roads over there, my feet getting ashy, having to wash them when I get home. I mean, I was just talking about this ease of life. And then at that age, I was just like, how come they have this and I don't, and we don't? And then that question never left me. I became obsessed with, you know how sometimes kids can become really obsessed with something? It was my case. I was just so obsessed with it. I wanted to know. And so I grew up that way. I wanted to know. And eventually with age, the question became, how come some countries like mine are poor, while other nations like the US, like Germany, like Switzerland, like Australia, New Zealand, are rich? And because this is it's been the defining question of my life, and I just went around living my life trying to find an answer to that question, looking everywhere I could for an answer to it. And I have heard it almost all, I think. I would like to think I've heard it all by now. I had people tell me with a very straight face, oh, Dorian, it's not your fault. It's just because, you know, the IQ. It's not your fault. Blacks and browns are just simply not as intelligent as white people. And so don't beat yourself up so hard. It's not your fault. I've gone to conferences where, with a very straight face, you had a panel discussing these issues, and people on those panels talking about how Indian people could never amount to much more as a group because, you know, it's just in their genes, and on top of that, they're some of the worst crooks that you can find. And then went on to African, you know, black people, and who knows what else. That stuff is very much out there. People are still debating stuff like that. I heard people say, oh, it's just because you don't have access to greater education. And I say, do you know that we have millions of young people every day coming out of African universities, and half of those millions of young people cannot find a job? And also, you know, part of my team, remote team, I do have a few Eswatini people on the team, and the first one I interviewed, she basically, and all of them are math people, by the way, and so this girl had a BS in math, very serious degrees here, and I told her, what are you doing now? Oh, I'm raising chickens. Why? Because there's no jobs around. I mean, if that woman was in the US right now, she probably could be working somewhere in Wall Street, making tons, gazillions of money. But right now, her skill set is being squandered away. Don't take me wrong, I love chicken, but it's squandered away in raising chickens right now. And the rest of us are being deprived from her skill sets and her talent. So you go tell someone like that, if you only get more education, maybe you'll get a job. And you watch her scratch your eyes out, as she should probably. Others malnourished, and then some people, oh, shoes, if you only give you shoes, Tom, shoes. All of that nonsense I heard. But the thing is, none of this stuff made sense to me, because I'm like, if this is so true, how come the same people you're talking about, they're supposedly dumb, they're supposedly this, they're supposedly that, how come, this doesn't seem to work either now, how come, it's working. Yes, it is working? Okay, how come then these people are here, these people, the same people, the minute they go to another place, these other places, they get to manifest their greatest potential. So now all of a sudden I'm starting to think, maybe this has nothing to do with the people, as you're claiming. Maybe this has to do with the place where they get to be or not. Because the only thing that changed in this equation is the place where these people happen to be. So now I'm starting to think, that's interesting. And so I keep on going. And at some point, eventually, you know, on my journey, we moved to Germany, then my family decided to move to France. I got primarily educated in France. After business school in France, I'm like, France is too small for my ambitions. I need to get the heck out of here. And I came to the United States. And when I came, I landed in my main gigs where I landed in Silicon Valley in the heydays of a dot-com boom, working for companies like Netflix and Google when most people did not even know. I mean, we didn't know these were going to become household brand names. I got lost going to little office Netflix in South San Jose so many times because we're in the middle of nowhere, tiny office. No one could guess where they would be. Same with Google. So my point is there, I discovered the magic of entrepreneurship. So anyway, quick fast forward, English is only my fourth language, so bear with me sometimes. I said at some point, you know, there I was in Silicon Valley, not even 25 years old, just bought my home in, I think back then, the most expensive zip codes in America. And the reason why I tell you this is because it matters. So here I was doing so well for myself, right? And on this one day, driving down, you know, Highway 1, going to Big Sur, feeling so happy, feeling so like little girl Magat she's come such a long way. But then at the same time I started feeling that way, my mood just switched
to dark, bleak. It would often do that to me whenever I felt good about myself and my achievements. It was not because I was bipolar, but it's because in those moments, as soon as I have this happiness, this pride, joy of achievement, quickly, I would think about the people back home. And that day, what happened is that my whole life, I had tried to reconcile, I shouldn't say reconcile, my whole life I found a way to put under the rug this discrepancy between the life of abundance that I've been offered in all of these places since my parents brought me to Europe, and then I moved to the United States myself. I could no longer kind of reconcile that life of abundance I was given with the life of scarcity that I had left back home. Oftentimes, whenever I was happy with what life has given me, I would think about the people who put themselves into little fishermen's boats and they try to cross to Europe to get a job. And oftentimes the boat doesn't make it. So right now, we have thousands of these people laying at the bottom of the ocean serving as fish food. Their only crime was go to look for work. Sometimes, somewhere above England, from a plane, a body drops because somebody thought it would be a good idea to hide in the landing gear of a plane to make it to Europe to get a job. Sometimes, the plane arrives, they open the cargo section, a body, dead, frozen. No one told them. It gets so cold up there, you die. Then they say, maybe these routes are all too dangerous, air or sea routes are too dangerous, so let us take land routes. When they take land routes, they get stuck oftentimes in Libya, and when you get stuck in Libya, then you get sold on an open slave market, yes, 2020s. The world started to know about this and believe in it only when CNN made a piece about it a couple of years ago. We knew, because so many of us belong to WhatsApp groups where people ask you to help pitch in so we can buy back somebody's freedom so they can go back home. So when, like me, you've been haunted your whole life with stories like this, to this day, these boats are still leaving. Because in these boats, I have these people telling me, Magatte, I would rather die trying than stay home poor, having to watch my mother need all types of things and not being able to provide for her. And I don't judge them. I think we all would do the same. Every one of you in this room, except if maybe you're a Native American, you did exactly the same thing. Your ancestors did the same thing. So that's what happened that day. I could no longer reconcile. I usually just put it under the rug. It was so overwhelming. I don't know what to do. So I would put it in the rug, and that day I just couldn't. You know what they say? The mind has an infinite ability to make sense of pretty much anything, including the worst. But the body doesn't. And that day my body reacted when my mind was trying to trick. And I jerked off. I almost, so much for the steering wheel, I normally should have ended at the bottom of the ocean that day. You should not have met me today. But somehow God decided otherwise for me. And I stopped the car and I made the deal with God. I'm going to change. I want to serve Africa from here on. I don't know what to do, but you show me the way. And eventually things started to happen. And long story short, I started my first business. And we had a sister company in the US and a sister company in Senegal. So usually that's how I build my businesses, because I always want to bring jobs back home. So the company in the US is usually sales and marketing, it's research and development, and the one in Africa is manufacturing, it's supply chain, it's all of that. And the reason why I bring this up is because as I was in the process of creating my first company, God also was proceeding to give me my answer to my question. Because when I started this first company, having sister companies in two sides of the world, I noticed, and I'll walk you through what I noticed. Back then, it was in 2004 when I started my first company. It was taking people, 20-something minutes normally to, especially today, 20-something minutes to register your business online, faster if you type faster than me, because me, I'm still looking at my fingers to type. I should have taken on typing, but it takes that little of time, couple $100, depending on which state you are, 300 maybe, but that's it. You're in business. Your business is registered. You're good to go. But back home, the same process, almost 2 years in time. So, and almost back then $5,000 in cost. And then you move on to, labor contract. I meet with you, we find an agreement, I need a lab technician, you happen to have a degree in a worthless degree in German, in this case, for what we're trying to do, but you seem to, I decided that I think you know what you're going to do, that it's going to work out, you decide it's going to work out, so we work together. The contract is signed, move on. But in Senegal, I'm trying to do the same contract with you, except that now, you and I sign a contract, but before I even do the contract, I have to look at what the government is saying. Because for every single job, the government has a categorization of your job. And because you have a PhD in German, which I seriously could care less, government is saying, I'm going to have to pay you 3 times more than Steve. Guess what I do? Am I going to hire you, or do I say, I'm sorry, doesn't work? Right? I'm sorry, it doesn't work. This is how 500,000 of these kids also, some of them could have a job, but they won't have a job, because if you're forcing me, government, to this type of salary for him, I say, I don't care what you have in your theories, reality is a BITCH, and it says I can't hire him. But let's say I even try to hire you. So I put the salary on there, and then you sign, I sign. We all like to think it stops right there, right? Who thinks it should go further than that? Okay, I see no hands up. But no, the story doesn't stop there. I'm going through this right now. I'm hiring 2 more people. So you sign, I sign in 3 sets. We sign 3 sets, because then now I have to drive all the way to the regional center of my area, to the government's office. We're going to the Inspection du Travail, the labor inspection department of the government. And there I bring my paperwork, and then they say, oh, and by the way, I had to travel there for 3 hours because, bad roads and everything. And it's not like they force you to have to need to work with these government offices, but they don't bring them to you. And so all the rural areas, places like that, are pretty much at a disadvantage because, you have to deal with these government officials, but they're not there. Their offices are in the center. So here, we're 3 hours away. So I have to get on the car. I go over there. And then you wait for hours because, he's out there running an errand. Only God knows what he's doing over there. And finally he shows up, and then he's like, well, where's so-and-so medical certificate? I'm like, what do you mean medical certificate? My CPA didn't tell me to do this. Because, by the way, you have to hire these experts because the rules and regulations are so complicated. It's better just to hire somebody who supposedly knows. So I call my CPA, and he's like, that's odd. I've never had to present any of those. And then he's like, let me talk to him. I'm like, here's the phone. And he talks to him, and the guy tells him, well, it's part of a law. It was done by presidential decree, and it's part of a law. Maybe in the capital city, they never ask about it just because they're too busy over there, but here we have time and we'll make you feel it. So he's like, I need a medical certificate because why? The government gets to decide how physically apt he, grown-up man, has decided that he wants to do this job. The government is going to get to decide if he's physically apt enough to do the job. So I am now back. I wasted my whole day. It's a whole day of work, and we all know time is money. I come back, and I ask you to go get a certificate. Go to the doctor. The doctor doesn't even look at you. He signs the paperwork, whatever, gives it to you, and you give it back to me. I go again. So you see how the racketeering happened here? This is rent-seeking. They don't even care if you're apt or not, even then. So, but doctors make money, extra money. It's so easy. Everybody has to go through it. Come on. And so I finally go there. And then this whole process, by the way, is taking more than a month now. So in this one situation, we had this one job where they claim the job doesn't exist. And then I'm like, what do you mean doesn't exist? How old are these laws? He looks back. These laws are dating back from the colonial times. So I won't give you more stories like how we got our electricity going, all of that stuff. I mean, it's like if you want to sit here and for me to walk you through what it takes, and then you're like, wow, just like 45 minutes take your shower, here it takes a minute. Hello? Same thing with doing business. And then right there in front of me, it was right there, the answer to my question. Why are we poor? At the end of the day, you're poor because you have no money. No money because no money at least to take care of your basic needs, most basic needs. You have no money because you have no source of income. What is a source of income for most of us? It's a job, isn't it? Where do jobs come from? Primarily the private sector, small and medium-sized enterprises. So don't you think we should make it easy for entrepreneurs to start a business and run their businesses anywhere they are? I think we should. And there are some economic indexes that measure this because we measure everything. Doing Business Index ranking of the World Bank is the most famous one. We have some other ones, the Heritage Fund, the Heritage Economic Index Freedom. And what they all show is what I have experienced as an entrepreneur on the ground time and time again. Because I'm right now building my third company, and let me tell you, nothing has changed. So if poverty is taken care of, income coming from jobs, which come from businesses being built, yet the business climate sucks so bad. So what these indexes show is that it is harder to do business in almost anywhere in sub-Saharan Africa than it is anywhere in, let's say, Scandinavian nations. I take Scandinavian nations because even the most anti-business people we know, Bernie Sanders, for example, love to cite them because he doesn't know what these countries really are. He takes them an example, and I tell people like that, do you know that Scandinavian nations are actually more capitalist than most African nations? And they're, what do you mean? Are you going for laissez-faire? I'm like, answer my question. Do you believe it should be as easy for any African entrepreneurs in Africa to start a business than it is for any Scandinavian entrepreneur in Scandinavia to start a business? Answer me yes or no. I have yet to hear somebody say no. And then when they say yes, I'm like, that's it. That's all I'm saying. The playing field has not been leveled. There is a key freedom that is lacking in most African nations. It's what we, the economists, call economic freedom. How free are you to enterprise? How free are you to start and run a business when you stand in the way of employment contract between him, grown-up man, and me? I have no freedom. When you have laws so complicated that, when the cost of doing business is so expensive, my freedom to enterprise is reduced. So on and so forth. Right there, I got it. Africa is the poorest region in the world because it happens to be the most over-regulated region in the world. Africa is the poorest region in the world because it's the part of the world where the citizens have the least freedom to enterprise. And that, my friends, is the reason why we're poor. All along, I thought we were poor because I thought that it was hard to do business because we're poor. I came to understand it's because it's hard to do business that we're poor. I'm not sure if I said that right, but you get my point. So it took me a lifetime to understand what's happening, but finally I have my question and everything checks by now, everything. So even when people say, oh, why do you say that? But what about slavery and colonialism? Has slavery happened? Yeah. Has colonialism happened? Yeah. Is it the reason why 60 plus years later we're still poor? I don't think so. So that's what I primarily came to exchange with you about. Because I am really sick and tired of a distraction that's going on right now, has been going on for the past 60 years, frankly. We have spent trillions of dollars on foreign aid towards Africa, nothing to show for. So unlike you I don't know how many people want to, Einstein said that insanity is doing the same thing and hoping for a different outcome. I'm tired of that because it would be funny if real people were not dying. It would be funny if I didn't have to go and live through the disrespect that the rest of the world has for people like me. It would be funny if you didn't have families separated the way I was separated from my family. And then not only at first I was separated from my parents, but later I had to be separated from my beloved grandma. And that I will never forgive anyone who has made that be the case for me or even have to be the case for many people today. I talked yesterday at another university. I had 3 kids from Guinea, and one of them was telling me how her parents are permanently separated from their family back in Guinea. Why? Because her dad managed to come in illegally here, and until he can get his paperwork, if he goes back, he cannot come back here. So you have to choose at some point which side of your family you're going to be with. So all of this would be very funny if real people's lives were not so much at, on the balance at this point. So I am killing myself sharing these ideas because I am tired of the time that we are wasting on wondering, is it aid? Is it not aid? Let us take, drinking water, clean water. Clean water is important. Don't take me wrong. We should not have to die of, waterborne diseases. I get that all. But even if you give me clean water, and yet I still don't have a job to care for my own needs, because that's what I want. No one wants to be a beggar for the rest of their lives. Really not. Anybody here wants to do that for the rest of their life, raise your hand. It is your right. Raise your hand, though. But usually I see nobody telling me, I want to live at the crutch of society, even if I didn't choose so. So really, come on. At some point, are you really saying that you agree we're no different than the rest of you? Or are you saying that actually there's maybe something different with the rest of you? Because then why do I never see you say, go to the same conclusions when it comes to Africans than it is when it comes to your little friends next door? There's a problem here. I have more respect for the person telling me my IQ is lower than the people saying, oh, no, it's not true. You're as smart as anybody else. But when it comes to reality, how do we help Africa? Charity, aid. Oh, how do we help Africa? Buy one, give one. Buy my shoes here and we give them back. Those actions in themselves is telling me that deep down maybe it's not all true. So I am tired of the precious time that we're wasting. That's the only reason why I'm here talking to you tonight.
So to give you guys a little perspective, if you look at the Economic Freedom of the World put out by the Fraser Institute, there are only 2 African countries that are in the upper half of the world, and that's Kenya and Rwanda. And Fraser Institute just put out the Economic Freedom of North America. They have one for the United States. Came out just today. I saw the email right before I came in, and Kentucky ranks 36th. So we don't do so well. But our 36th doesn't compare to being in the lower half of the world. The world is a huge difference, but Kentucky doesn't do well either. But economic freedom is important. It's important because it allows individuals to act. And I think that's where you feel the insult, right? Is it you're not allowed to do what you want to do?
Yeah, we have chains around our necks and no one is seeing it. We have chains, thank you. We have chains around our necks and no one is seeing it. I line up 100 Americans and I line up 100 Africans, it's going to be the same. All of them are going to come up and I ask these people, why do you think the region is the poorest region in the world? I'm going to hear it all. And you want to know what I hear usually? You go and click, if you haven't looked at it, look at the Sustainable Development Goals of the UN. They used to be called the Millennium Development Goals, 17 goals. Someone like me, I look at it, I'm like, this is a joke. Because all of these goals, when you think about it, except maybe for a couple of them, they're all a direct consequence of poverty. And by the way, eradicating poverty is one of the goals. And I'm like, you don't understand that if we tackle poverty, all of these other goals, which are problems, just start to go poof, 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 poof. But no, for them, clean water access is a goal. Malnourishment is a goal. All of these are a goal. And I'm like, please. And so, but the problem is, the more you have of these goals that in a way all come from this one guy, you are diverting and you are diluting the efforts. And worse yet, right now, 80% of our efforts, resources, time, and money, all of us combined, is spent on the symptoms of poverty. And a lousy little 20% is working on the root cause of poverty. When, at this rate, do you think we're going to get there? When?
Yeah, it's creating wealth. It's not reducing poverty, right?
Absolutely. So I know that you told me that a couple of weeks ago, I don't know, maybe this person is in the room right now. I wish I was there when that happened. But when someone said, what's his name? Bezos, was it Bezos or was it somebody else? Should give all of his money to poor people. Good luck with that, because Bezos, I know with all of his wealth, does not have the trillions of dollars that have been spent on poor people over the past 60 years. So all we're going to do is make Bezos poor, join the other poor, because at the end of the day, if you don't create wealth and all you do is consume, at some point it doesn't matter that your name is Bill Gates or Elon Musk. I think he's the richest man in the world now. At some point that money also goes up in the air. We gotta have somehow, somewhere, we gotta build wealth and value. And if you don't do that, if you just keep on taking, at some point it dries up. So this whole idea that if only rich people give them money, and really, what are you saying to me? Give you money? I'm sorry, but Bezos owes me nothing. I'm gonna say it out loud. Bezos owes me nothing, Elon Musk owes me nothing. They made whatever money they made, I'm gonna make mine, thank you very much. Maybe it might not be as much as they made, maybe I'm taking home a salary from working from somewhere, but I got it like this. So what they do is what they do, I don't care, it doesn't matter. So I like to say sometimes, if we only focused on more like, this act of building rather than what I call truly, it seems to me like a lot of it is envy. And I have a big problem with envy and oftentimes the envy people look at the other folks and they're like, oh, you're greedy. Well, greedy, envy, you're all the same, you're all different sides of the same coin, for all I know. It is sin. It is sin, either way you look at it, whether you're envious or greedy. And so Jeff Bezos is greedy because he's making tons of money, and you're envious because you want to take it away from him, probably. So I'm just sick and tired of the way we are looking at the world, because once again, I guarantee you, if you ask Africans on the ground, most of us, we're not going to say, we don't care about what Jeff Bezos has. We want to be given a chance also to thrive on our own and to do our own thing. I don't want to owe my life to anyone. I just don't. God is the only person I want to owe my life to. That's it. And so anyway, I'm just not even going to go deeper on that, because this really pisses me off, because whenever I see people arguing, and don't take me wrong, I think I understand where it's coming from. When people say, so-and-so should give money to the poor, I get that. But that was never designed to be, if somebody is in crisis, if there is a humanitarian crisis, please, don't get me wrong, we all jump in there and help. But when aid and giving becomes a way of life for the recipient, you've got a whole other beast in your hands. And that's just what I'm against.
Okay, we're going to open this up for questions, and so if anybody has a question, raise your hand, or we'll just put this mic right up there. Stand in line behind the mic up there if you have a question. Otherwise, I'll just ask more.
Hello, can you hear me? I'm from Bangladesh. I understand your viewpoint. What I don't understand is, what is our takeaway from today's talk? So what I'm trying to say is, there is problem in regulation in those countries, like my country, Bangladesh also. And what UN has developed, those sustainable development goals, 17 goals, helping some people in some way. But from what we understand now, it's the problem of economic freedom. But we can, like people like me, students like me can come here, get a better life, but that's probably just few of us. So what's the solution for that, do you think it is, to eradicate poverty?
Thanks for the question. So a couple of things. The first thing I'm going to say is, on this process of solutions to bringing greater economic freedom to African nations in this case, and your country is in the same situation. I think it's important that we don't undervalue we don't take for granted the importance of awareness. Because you say, we're here, we know economic freedom is a problem. Like I said, before you came here probably, who here would have pointed to the problem of economic freedom, or when you get out of these gates, are you hearing people say a lack of economic freedom is a big part of the problem? Who here in an honest manner will say, I knew this all along? Raise your hands. Okay. You see the room, I see 4 people, maybe hands up. And that in itself is a problem. So what people take from this talk, I'm hoping, because you knew about this, so you're like, I know about this, and then tell me next, and I will tell you next. But before we go next, we need to be more than 4 people knowing about the diagnosis, first of all. So now, how many of you might put in the balance that economic freedom is part of a problem? Raise your hands. When you first came in, you didn't know. I'm seeing way many hands going up. That in itself, this difference between hands going up and down is, if I only did that tonight, I'm happy. But then I will take you further. What do we do for those of us who know that? I'm doing 2 things right now, so beyond raising awareness. One is we are working on I am the director of the African Center for Prosperity of the Atlas Network, which is the largest organization in the world working on taking down barriers of entry for entrepreneurs in the native countries. We only work with natives because we don't want to be telling people what it is exactly that they need in this whole thing. They have to think about it for themselves. They come to us, and then we support with financing and all of that. So, as the director for the center, I oversee all the free market think tanks in which we invest on the continent. And these guys are doing amazing work, pushing for reforms when it comes to entrepreneurship. So that has been going on, and they're doing great work. But at the same time, we all know that reform work is tedious, is long, and it takes time. So because we also have a sense of urgency, I'm also working on some other projects which have to do with what we call startup cities. Has any of you here heard about startup cities or the charter cities or anything like that? Raise hands if you have. Great. So the concept, for those of you who don't know about startup cities, is to think almost about an area of land, as the way I describe it is almost like your computer, and the set of the law and governance that is going to be subjected to becomes your operating software. Because right now we know, based on what we're talking about, that most of the poor world is basically zoned for poverty through these, bad regulations, over-regulations, this the governance problem as well. So what people like us have been working on is, and my husband has been leading these efforts for the past 15 years. The latest city like that is happening in Honduras right now, so I would encourage you to go read about that and read about all the controversies as well about it. And we are doing something similar we signed an MOU with a Western African nation that I cannot give name on right now, but some other efforts are going on in Zambia, in Nigeria, various parts of the continent. Those guys are announcing their cities, but yeah. So what we're doing here is creating new zones, which is way at a new generation zone from what people can imagine when they think about even special economic zones or free zones, which is, in my mind, below special economic zones. But yeah, so working on efforts like that to kind of almost try to work from a blank canvas, and instead of trying to go for piecemeal legislation, we go the radical way, but on one corner somewhere in this country, and we create these zones that have their own law and governance, and then offering the host country a chance for people to try before they buy. So these are all the initiatives that we're involved in. I like to criticize by creating. I don't like to be like, oh, there's a big problem. And I know that this problem is so intimidating to many people because they're like, you're talking to me about a problem that only government can solve. I can be very intimidating, I get that. But some people are working on these issues, and I like to say that in Africa, and maybe even for the rest of the world, people are like, Levin, they look at me, they're like, what, you mean like one city is gonna solve things? I'm like, think about it this way. We have 54 countries, 55 depending on how you count. Some of them worse than others. But my point is, all we need is one city to work somewhere. And from there, you have other people looking and being, how come over there it was possible? We want the same. You get emulation. People start to emulate what it is that you've been trying to do. So me, that's the only work I'm focused on. I'm not looking at changing all of Africa at once. It's not going to happen. But I am we try to be clever on where we know we need to push one domino. Push the domino and then it travels all the way. We all know these forces, how it works. One tiny action on the other end has a huge ripple effect. So these are all the things we work on. When the book comes out, you can get that, and then you can then, if you want to be involved, let us know. But these are all the things we work on. If you have better ideas, please, by all means, come and share with us. I'm all about let's be in solutions mode. I definitely refuse to believe that there's no way to change this. There's a way to change this. Many people are working on it, and I believe many more will start, also joining the forces. So if you want to know more about all of this and you want to bring your skill set to it, reach out to me, magatw@gmail.com. Very easy. And then we can tell you what's going on, what some different groups are working on this continent, on Latin America. I know that because since Honduras happened, neighboring Guatemala, where the people whom we're working with are from, but they said Guatemala is never going to go for this. We need a model somewhere else. And that was one of the motivations to do it in Honduras. Now Guatemala wants to do the same thing. You see what I'm talking about? So for us, it's like keep your eye on the ball. This is a big problem. We don't pretend to fix it all at once. And we're going to make errors. We're going to make errors. Out of all of these cities that are popping up, there's going to be so many failures, it's not even funny. But somehow, somewhere, someone will succeed, or the next generation of it will succeed. This is how innovation works. It's always worked this way. At first, you think you were crazy, and at some point, we get there. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, I was going to ask a little bit about how you work with government, but you kind of answered a lot of that. So 25 years ago, my father was trying to start a wind farm in India, but he wanted to start a windmill generating business, and he worked his way up. We were lucky, he had some contacts, and he was able to work his way up all the way to the finance minister of India. And India is a very stable country with a very stable government. I mean, it has its issues, lots of issues, overregulation being a big part of it. He did a practice project while he was there, while we were staying with relatives, just to see how hard it would be, and he became convinced it was very difficult, but he kept going. And after he made all these deals with all the different people, all the different levels of government, all the way up, it seemed like it was going to go through. We came back to the United States. He'd spent my college education fund that they'd saved up. This was going to be what we were going to do. And that was when the government changed. Rajiv Gandhi was voted out as prime minister and got his vote as no confidence. All the people he'd worked with were no longer in power. So the idea that a government could change so quickly, and those of us in the United States, we're used to a different system, whereas a lot of countries in the rest of the world are using a parliamentary system where these changes can happen with seemingly no warning. We have a few years of warning, not necessarily a lot of warning, but we have a few years of warning. So how do you work with this? How do you? You said you're trying to set up model cities in overregulated countries to try to demonstrate how well this works, but you have people with entrenched political interests.
Yeah, and that's a precise reason why we're doing it this way. If you find, and I like to do it this way, a leader, because so many of our so-called leaders should not be called leaders. But anyway, let's just be generous tonight and call them leaders. If you can find one, though, who gets to see what we're talking about, this is the reason why we're doing these zones this way. Because while you're over here, you're really not touching what any of these cronies are doing. And that's the reason why we're actually doing it this way. And so we have found that to be really helpful. You play over there, we're playing over here, we're not touching anything. Because we're starting with barren sand. And then what happens, and what we're finding is, in situations like this, like how in all of these countries, oftentimes you have a big barons, right? You have a big barons, a big cronies, and they get everything. And then what happens oftentimes is the second generation, so everyone who are more or less left out from the people, these alligators who are eating everything, like maybe the younger brother or whatever, like so-and-so took everything, and then they're like, where do we go? Usually they're the ones who work with us to champion a new one of his cities. And then what we do is we work back with the government, where the government is saying, okay, this actually doesn't engage me for anything. Actually, some countries, it turns out, have in their constitutions an experiment clause. This one country we're working with in Africa, it's in the constitution that if the president wants to play with an experiment, there's actually many, like even parliament, he doesn't need parliament for so many different so you have to have really strong legal teams to look at all of this, and then the team also has to look at the international treaties that this country is involved in, because when you have an international treaty, the international treaty supersedes the law of the land. So we're not doing, even then, we're doing nothing wrong, we're doing nothing new, because countries are doing this all the time. All the time, they're giving other jurisdictions precedent over themselves. So in any case, here what we do, we use that president that's in line with us, and we bake into the city a minimum 50-year guarantee. Basically, the country is saying, no matter what happens to us, politically speaking, maybe next time it's a big fat communist or socialist that comes in place and wants to kill all of us, well, the minute they do that, now it's almost like, we're in trouble. So in Honduras, they're discovering that the hard way right now, that actually these clauses have teeth in them. And so that's how we're doing it. And 50 years is plenty enough for the case to be made. So there's a real clever way to do these things, but the key here is to find a president that's in line and aligned with you. Somebody who's like, if I try to do this to the whole country at once, I'm going to be yanked. Opposition party will never let me go, nothing's going to happen. But if you have a president who has this vision and wants this to be done, they just had their hands tied, this is a way you help them untie. And the cronies don't bother them, because the cronies are like, where they're bothered is they have a business, you show up and you take the business away from them. We're not doing any of that, because everything we're doing is coming from new business that they don't even know yet, they don't even suspect could come. So there are ways to get all of this done, and if you want to know more, let's definitely send me an email, and I can send you some writings, I can send you, and you can follow the Honduras case, you can, and some of the other people working on this. But that's pretty fascinating. It's also, it gives me so much hope, because there's so much we can do. We didn't realize that before. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing your experience, and I personally relate to a lot of that. I was born here, but I lived in Iraq for a long time, and again, my experience was very similar. However, as most people know, Iraq is always dragged into war, and even when they get out of war, they're put back in. And so it seems like it's almost a waste of time to focus on trying to get that economic freedom, because the government's corrupt. So even if you did get that freedom, even if you did try to build up your business, it will get torn down eventually. So the thing that I wanted to say was, it almost like it seems as though giving the resources to people in this sort of situation, just giving them the resources to start is, a more efficient way than helping these people try to gain economic freedom. But I wanted to see what your opinion would be on how to achieve, and you touched base on a lot of this, but focused more on a corrupt government, because this is going to be a country that is in war constantly, even in the future, and the people are tired. So, even trying to get them motivated it feels impossible, because they're so desensitized to all of this now. I don't know if my question was clear or not.
No, I think your question was very clear. Thank you.
Thank you.
And this is where optimistic Magat might not come through. Because when it comes to your country and all the forces at play, I will be the last one to claim that I know exactly what should happen there, because it's just so much more muddier than what's happening with us. So on that one, I would probably suggest with the Atlas Network, one of my colleagues focuses on the organizations that are working in the Middle East, and I would love for you to be connected to them, because I do know that they're working on some pretty interesting ways to bring freedom to the people, as well as greater prosperity to your nations. And this is from people in your country. This is from people in your country. What is it?
No.
Okay. Sorry. So these think tanks, same thing. They're started. were started and ran by people in your country who understand everything that you probably understand, and they just have an understanding of a situation that I don't claim to have. But I think you talking to them might help you bring an answer to what you talk to your question. But I can. So that's really what I can say there, because I believe in intellectual humility. So this is just, your situation is much more complicated and very much more different from most of the situations I'm talking about when I talk about the countries in most Africa. So, but there are people working to make countries like yours better. I suggest you connect with them. You just cannot stay in the dark feeling like, hopeless and powerless. Email me, I'll connect you with the people working in that side of the world.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Hello, I just had a quick question. I was wondering what role do you think Africans who gain resources in Africa, who leave Africa, play in the economic disparities that Africa faces?
Let me see if I understand your question. Are you asking for people who people who left and maybe we're here today and we're doing good? You're asking about can we play a role back home?
No, I'm asking if for those people who have gained resources within Africa who end up leaving or doing business in America or in China, how do you think that plays in the economic disparities that their countries would face?
Well, to me, if you're not doing business on the ground, you're not contributing to the economics of where you are. It's that simple. I'm not going to judge them because they left Africa and went maybe to. Are you talking about people who made money in Africa and now are gone from Africa?
Yeah.
And are you talking about all people confused, like non-Africans and Africans? They made money there and then they go somewhere else? Is it who you're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So no, people who, if you're not doing business with the content on the ground, you're definitely not contributing there. And that's why I always try, my businesses always have in common, like I said, a sister company, their sister company here. So it's important for me that we're creating jobs back home and that I'm contributing to my local community. Now, I'm not going to be one to judge those who, for whatever reason, decided that they're just going to go. But I can tell you that if you're not spending a dime on the ground, you're not participating to the local economy. That's for sure. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, so my question is, how do you find the balance between over-regulation, like you're saying is happening, preventing business from starting, and under-regulation, where you have tons of pollution and other negative externalities and such that are being brought about? And how do you find the middle ground that allows business to flourish but does not hurt everyone else?
Can you give me an example of an under-regulated country in your mind?
Congo, this child labor is being used, and at least the enforcement is not fully there.
Have you seen anywhere in Congolese laws that they are so? Because I get this all the time. And that's a very good question. So thank you for allowing me to touch upon this. So often people are like, Africa has landless law. Everything is going on. Everything is permissible. Remember again, with poverty comes such abject human violation rights. By this time, humans everywhere on this earth normally have rights, right? I think so many countries. Do we have countries by now that haven't signed the human rights, convention, right? So humans almost everywhere have rights on paper, but you see it even here. You see it in some of, even in Scandinavian nations. At the end of the day, this is going to be a terrible thing to say, but poor people almost anywhere get their rights violated on a constant basis. Is it right? No. But it is what's going on? Yes. So I'll give you an example. I'm going to share with you why I feel some of this stuff is happening. You're using the child labor thing. And By the way, this is from you and me sitting on the other side and saying child labor is bad. But for the longest time in the US, people were having kids, so you have people who can work on the farm to help you. So today, of course, once you've made it to the other side, I don't think there's any parent who would prefer their child, given a choice, who would prefer their child, first of all, to be working instead of going to school when they're in school age. I don't think I have met one parent. Again, it doesn't mean that there's not 1% psychopaths among us, but I haven't met one parent yet who would tell me, I prefer my child to be laboring rather than being at school. Thank you very much. So usually that's happening where to? Where you have extreme poverty. And what did we say about where poverty came from again? So my point is, we can all try to protect these kids as much as we can. But there are some forces that we're not really aware of, because at the end of the day, I have heard of stories of parents selling one child to be able to feed the other children. All of this is happening. I go back to the same old culprit, the poverty that does that. Poverty is a terrible thing. So in this situation, I'm just being very, the reason why I asked you, tell me one country that's under-regulated, and I knew you were going to, I was waiting for you to tell me a country, and I would tell you, it's Congo happens to be one of the most regulated nations on earth, where last time I checked, it takes you up to 18 pieces of documents. Each one of them needs to be notarized to import or export anything out of that country. So if you think I'm having a hard time being an entrepreneur in my country, you try being an entrepreneur in Congo. Now, I was talking to someone earlier, Emmanuel. I don't know if he's here tonight because Emmanuel is from the Congo. Where is Emmanuel? So Emmanuel probably can talk to you about some of these things some more. But the thing is, when you have also so many resources available, the Congo also is a place where, remember when I told you earlier, Africa, 54 countries, 55, depending on how you count? We do know that some countries might be on the, as the continent gets better, we do know that some countries might be the last ones to probably get better. And sadly, I've always said that unless something major happens, the Congo might be towards the later countries to turn around. Because there, you have all these resources that completely muddy the water. It's like there's so many people fighting for the resources, some of them external, some of them internal, and these people, it's just all entangled. It's going to be longer and harder to detangle. But in the process, what you're talking about is going on, but my argument is going to be to you, I don't believe it's because of under-regulation. I think it's probably, it is definitely a very regulated country. If you go and open their books, open their laws, you're going to see laws everywhere that you do not even suspect. Are people respecting them? No, because when you're poor, a lot of this goes out of a window. And so I'm just very worried that when I hear someone like you say, but if it's because of under-regulation that they're doing bad, and then the idea is then put more regulation, you can start to imagine, you say the Congo is under-regulated, which I disagree with, therefore let's put more regulations on, and I'm like, you might as well just go and kill the few entrepreneurs that are still trying to do something there, because that's the only people who get in trouble. So I'm not sure if it's helpful, but yeah, I just wanted to ask that. Sorry.
Thank you.
Hi, so you had mentioned earlier that a lot of the solutions that the everyday person was feeling towards poverty in these countries weren't effective. The ideas of like, oh, if Bezos just gave his money to all the poor people, that would fix the problem. Or if we do the buy one, get two free, and they'll give an African kid a pair of shoes, that it helps certain people, but it doesn't fix the problem at hand. And you mentioned that you have your own potential solutions for the problem, but I wanted to ask for people like me who I want to help, but I don't have a lot of financial or political power to do big steps. I was wondering, for these kinds of people, do you think there are any direct steps we can take, or do you think just spreading the correct information and informing the people who have these other this disinformation, do you think that's the best thing we could do right now?
Thank you. What's your name?
Emily.
Emily. Yeah, no, Emily, thanks for the question. First of all, never underestimate the power, like I said, in awareness building. So if as you walk out of these doors, you can help me when the world in front of you says, oh, aid and charity, or Africa's poor because of this or whatever, you just say, I don't know, but I've heard this woman over there. I'm not so sure yet what to think of what she said, but she definitely said something that is not part of what I usually hear. And I think we should, at the very minimum, we should investigate. That alone, Emily, remember when I told you about that little action that in the end has this huge ripple effect? Do not underestimate the power of you today being able to take that voice out of this room. That's number one. Number two, just like I know so many people were buying Tom shoes, I was, when I didn't understand much more than that. I was buying Tom shoes. And by the way, when you're saying it helps some people, let me tell you a little bit about Tom shoes. You know, the village where we manufacture in Africa, it happens to be in Senegal, it happens to be the capital city of in Senegal of shoemaking. We have 215 little mom-and-pop shoemaking businesses, each one of them hiring 15, 20, 25 people, sometimes more. Multiply that in how many jobs are out there through that industry. Now, think about what happens to these people the day the truck full of free Tom shoes shows up. Think about what happens to these people, Emily. What do you think happens to them?
They go out of business.
Thank you. Because who can compete against free? And then because the Tom Shoes model was so successful for Tom Shoes, the brand, the company, Blake Minkowski, the founder, everybody and their mothers set out to do the same thing. Now I'm getting free tampons, I'm getting free soaps, I'm getting free everything. So all you're doing is pretty much destroying the little bit of economy that's happening in these places. And that's what those were the unintended consequences that people were not thinking about. Oops. So there, I know so many of you were buying Tom shoes. But what if I tell you today now you have so when you said, I care, and this is what kept me in the game. Because I'm like, you have all of these people who care. It shouldn't be their job to try to figure out what's the right answer. Maybe criticize by creating. We are the ones affected by this. They only are nice enough to care. Let us not have them do the work. We do the work and make it easy for them to partake. So we have this concept called CARE 3.0, because CARE 1.0, aid and charity, we know that doesn't work. CARE 2.0, social entrepreneurship, represented by Buy One, Give One, we know that doesn't work. So I'm proposing CARE 3.0. In this case, in my case, and somebody from Bangladesh can do that for Bangladesh or your part of the world, but here I'm saying buy African products made in Africa by Africans. And we're even creating a badge called the Cheetah Made badge, because when you buy a product like that, you know that whole ripple effect behind is happening. So we are working on making it easy for you to be part of a solution. And beyond that, do you want to come and work with us on the startup cities? Or maybe you want to just intern on something, or I don't know, edit some papers that we're working on, anything like that. There is room for literally everybody. And no support is too little. I love these places, these solutions where everybody can be part of the solutions. So I'm not sure if it's helping you, but do not undermine your ability to help me, first and foremost, change the narrative by just saying, I've heard something different, we need to investigate. This is not as black and white as you guys say. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.